Welcome back to Checkmate with Blake, and in this video I'm going to teach you guys how to improve your attacking chess. In many positions, players are often looking for all these different tactics and trying to understand each position, but the first tactic that you should look for is forcing moves. And when we talk about forcing moves, there's three different types of forcing moves: checks, captures, and threats. Now this might seem kind of basic to you guys. You may think I understand all that. This is kind of simple, but as I'm going to show you guys in all five of these positions, there are many different types of forcing moves that you may not be aware of. So stick to the end of the video and you will see them. I'll give you guys different examples. If you enjoy this video, please consider giving a like to it. It will help promote the video. If you want to join the community that we have here, feel free to subscribe. We'll go ahead and get right into the video. In this first position I have in here today, I'm going to be talking about forcing moves through checks, which again is one of the different types of forcing moves. So, first of all, why should we look for forcing moves instead of other tactics? Well, forcing moves are just that. They force your opponent into a worse position. So you should always look for moves that force because they're the simplest to calculate and they're oftentimes some of the strongest moves on the board. So when we look at this example here, we have a forcing move through a check. What are the checks we have? Well, the only check that we have on the board is here. But if we do some basic calculation, we will see that if the king moves, the only move they have is here because the knight cuts off these squares. And if they were to move here with our queen here, this would be a checkmate in one. So we then think, okay, what can they play instead? Their only other move to block the check is actually to play this move pawn g6. And if we continue down the line of looking at forcing moves, we will then see that we can take here. We can sacrifice our knight. Because if the pawn captures, we will win the rook. And if the pawn does not capture, we will have a discovered attack on the king. So the first example, always look for forcing moves through checks. And I'll go ahead and play that out. And as you guys will see here, it'll end here because the best move they actually have is actually to take here and give up their rook in this position. And that's only because we had forcing moves. Now in the second one here, I'm going to be talking about forcing moves through checkmate threats. So what are the checkmate threats we have here? When we first look at this position, we will see that the king actually cannot move anywhere. So if we were able to give it a check in any way, we would actually have a checkmate. Can we do that? Can we achieve that? What else do we notice in this position? We notice that their queen is actually looking at our queen here. So, is there a way that we can threaten their queen and threaten checkmate through a forced checkmate idea? Well, the move we can play here is actually playing this move knight d4, which is an amazing move because, again, we are threatening a checkmate here. And if they take our queen, which is actually what they play here in this position, we will take here with a checkmate. Now, you may say, is there a way for them to stop the checkmate threat? Well, the best move, believe it or not, according to the engine, is actually to take our knight with their queen. So to give away their queen for our knight because they cannot stop this checkmate threat. Because if they, for example, capture with the knight, well, then we will just take the queen and we'll be up a whole queen. So their best move in this position is to take and lose the exchange because we have this forced checkmating idea. But of course, in this example, they do not, which allows us to have this checkmate idea, all because we were looking for checkmates. So to kind of slow down here, the point I'm trying to illustrate with this example is if you know that you have a checkmate square, a checkmate potential, if you know that you could potentially take here with checkmate, this is all you have to calculate. Because then all of a sudden it doesn't matter where your queen is. It doesn't matter if your queen falls. It doesn't matter if they take your queen. Because you have a forced checkmate threat, they have to instead acknowledge your threat first. And just to show you guys, I'm going to go to an analysis just to show you. Again, the top engine move, I guess you guys can't see it. I don't have it pulled up. It's actually a brilliant move that we played. But the best move they have is actually to take here, in which we would just win a queen. Now, on this third lesson, I'm going to talk about forcing moves with less valuable pieces. Because sometimes you can force moves by simply attacking a more powerful piece with a less powerful piece. For example, like if we were attacking their queen here with our bishop, obviously it would be somewhat of a forcing move because they don't want to exchange their queen for our bishop because our bishop is worth so much less. So in this example, we actually have a way that we can force moves with less valuable pieces. Try to spot the move in this position before I show you guys, but the move actually is this quiet move, pawn a3, because after the bishop moves back, notice we can tempo the bishop. Now when we play this move, the bishop is completely trapped. And you may say, why is that? Because can't they just take here? Well, if they take, we would capture their queen. So this is a forcing sequence because at the end of the line, they're not able to take here or we would win their queen. So we have actually trapped their bishop and won their bishop by simply attacking it with less valuable pieces, specifically with pawns. In this fourth lesson, I want to talk about forcing moves with a weak king. Now, this is a very, very important position, so I want you to pay attention. This is a position where I notice a lot of beginners struggle. A lot of beginners fail with this attack that they have on the board because they don't understand just how weak their king is. And when their king is this weak, especially if you can get a queen to deliver some sort of checks over here, oftentimes you will get in a very, very strong position because their king is just not safe. And when their king is not safe, similar to the first example, we can force moves through check. Now, this one I talked about forcing moves with a weak king specifically because we're going to play this move first, forcing their king away from the defense of this knight. So now when we take the knight, I want you to pause the video. How do we continue here? Again, remember the forcing moves that we have. We want to force them into a worse position. Now, you may see that maybe we could have a checkmate here if we could somehow get our queen over here. But if you play this move, I'm going to play just to illustrate why it's wrong here. If we play it, they will play the move f5, and as you will see, our attack is gone. So instead, you have to remember these forcing ideas. You need to force the king away from the defense of this rook, so that now when you play this, f5 does not work, because we are also threatening to take this rook and threaten a checkmate. They cannot defend this checkmate threat that we have here, and they cannot defend this one as well. They cannot defend both simultaneously, and it is only possible through these forcing checks that we used with their weak king. Now, this last one is probably my favorite. It's a very, very fun one here. And this one is you need to calculate these lines pretty well to make sure that your attack works. But this one is about forcing moves with discovered attacks, which is the final threat, or the final form of forced attacks, which is captures. So how can we force a discovered attack to win? What you might notice is that if we take here, you think, well, maybe they'll take our queen, but don't stop calculating there. Because if they capture our queen in this position, what do we have? And this is why force moves are so strong. Because you can ignore these threats. You can ignore the threat on your queen. Because once we capture here, even though we give away our queen, we take here with a discovered attack. And because it's a discovered attack, which is one of the most strong attacks in all of chess, because we have this discovered attack, they have to respond to it, right? So they have to play a move such as maybe bringing the bishop out to block this check. But what do we have in that final position? Try and calculate it yourself. But the move that we have is now we can take the rook because we had that discovered attack. I will show this line. So we go ahead and take here. They take our queen, which is not the best move in this position. I'll pull up an analysis just to show you guys, but actually the best move is actually to play this move king e7. But because they fell for our traps, because we're playing these forcing lines and they played it incorrectly, now we have this discovered attack here where, again, they have to respond to it, but regardless of how they do, we will take the rook on the very next move and have a check, have a very, very strong attack. Let's see. We'll go down here. As I said, their best move here is actually king e7, believe it or not. Again, I don't have it pulled up where you guys can see it, but this is actually their best move here. But because they took our queen, when we take here, once they block and we take here, now notice how strong our position is. Of course, it's not actually a checkmate threat, but according to the engine, we're up 9.58, as you guys can see. So we are completely crushing. And again, all of these ideas were only possible through using these ideas of forced checks, forced captures, and forced threats. So, as a summary, when you guys look at these positions in the future, such as ones like that we just covered here, I want you guys to think about the impossible. What can happen if I just give away my queen? Look at that line because it's a forced attack, because we have a forced check. So again, look for these forcing lines. All it takes is some basic calculation. And if you look for these tactics first, I guarantee that you all win more games and improve your elo. I hope that you guys found this video to be helpful. Please leave a like and let me know in the comments what you guys would like to see in the next video. And if you enjoyed my content and you'd like to join the community, please consider subscribing. I'd love to have you guys. Thank you all so much for watching.